The greatest players of the last few years are beginning to show their age a little bit. And sadly, it's time for us to accept that some of these guys just ain't all that great anymore.
And the Packers are going to win it. A.J. Green was the target, and he never looked for the ball.
Not every NFL legend can play at an elite level for as long as guys like Jerry Rice, Tom Brady, or Darrell Green. It takes a lot to be able to dominate the league for 2 decades. Unlike Brady, these 10 big-name stars have seen their play regress mightily, and they are clearly no longer superstars. Julio Jones. Many superstar wide receivers tend to slow down once they enter the wrong side of 30. There are exceptions, of course. Jerry Rice, Terrell Owens, and Randy Moss remain dominant even as they approach their mid to late 30s. But unfortunately, Julio Jones isn't going to experience the same longevity as those 3 legends. Injuries have quickly caught up to the first ballot Hall of Famer who couldn't even produce like a number 2 wideout for the Tennessee Titans. As a member of the Falcons in 2020, Jones had 771 yards in just 9 games. He easily would have hit the 1,000-yard mark had he played the entire season. But his hefty contract and soured relationship with the team prompted the Falcons to trade Julio to Tennessee in the 2021 offseason. It looked like a huge win for the Titans at the time. But the truth is, Jones hasn't played much of a role whatsoever in their success. Julio hasn't been a legitimate red zone threat for a while now. He's clearly lost a few steps and isn't able to create separation on defenders the way he used to. His yard per game totals were less than half of what he would average in Atlanta, going from an average of 95.5 during his 10 years in the ATL to a measly 43.4 in year 1 with the Titans. And his lone touchdown in 2021 didn't even come close until week 18. Having dealt with several injuries over the last 2 seasons, coupled with his age, it's safe to say that Jones is nearing the end of the line. J.J. Watt. It's frustrating to see a universally loved player like Watt endure so many injuries in the back half of his career. Since capturing his 3rd Defensive Player of the Year award in 2015, Watt has played the following number of games over the last 6 seasons: 3, 5, 16, 8, 16, and 7. Watt's last great season was 2018, when he played all 16 contests and racked up 16 sacks and 7 forced fumbles. His sack totals fell to 4 in 2019 and to just 5 in 2020. Watt's 2021 season, his first with the Arizona Cardinals, was cut short when he was forced to undergo shoulder surgery. Even then, he only had the 1 sack in 7 games. He's still a very serviceable player, no doubt. But Watt isn't a Pro Bowl talent anymore, even when he is on the field. Injuries have taken their toll on one of the greatest defensive players to ever play the game. The Cardinals just have to accept that this isn't 2015 J.J. Watt anymore. Ezekiel Elliott. Let's make one thing very clear. Zeke is still a number 1 running back, and more than a dozen teams would happily take him over their current starters. That being said, let's not forget just how dominant Elliott was from 2016 to 2019. During that time, he had captured 2 rushing titles, had 3 seasons of over 1,300 rushing yards, and 1 year in which he racked up 2,001 yards from scrimmage. Ezekiel led the NFL in rushing yards per game in each of his first 3 NFL seasons. That was then, and well, this is now. The sad truth is that the current version of Ezekiel Elliott is no longer an elite back. He is not in the same category as Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon, or Nick Chubb. Not even close. Zeke has clearly lost some of that burst that made him such a dynamic runner in his first few seasons. His rushing yards per game totals have dipped significantly over the last 2 years. And it's hard to forget the ball security issues after he fumbled a whopping 6 times in 2020 alone. If it weren't for his mammoth contract, Dallas probably would have moved forward with Tony Pollard as their starter. But they have to get what they can out of Elliott while he's being paid those superstar bucks. In this day and age, it's tough for running backs to play at a high level, say, for more than 5 years. Given his mileage and the decreased production over the last 2 years, it's safe to say that Zeke has peaked. Chris Harris Jr. There was a time where Harris was on a Hall of Fame trajectory. But the former Denver Broncos star and current Los Angeles Chargers defensive back really hasn't been a high-level performer for a while now. 2021 marks the 3rd straight year in which Harris's grade at PFF fell into the 60s. In 2018, his penultimate season with Denver, Harris graded out at 85.5. Harris was the key centerpiece of Denver's once vaunted no-fly zone defense. Without his shutdown skills, the Broncos wouldn't have won Super Bowl 50. From 2014 to 2018, he was arguably the top cornerback in the game. But as is the case with many NFL positions, it's very common to see cornerbacks lose a step or two in their early 30s. The great Darrell Green was basically done when he turned 31, for instance. Even Deion Sanders was well past his prime when the Dallas Cowboys cut him. Melvin Ingram. Remember when Ingram and Joey Bosa were once among the NFL's most feared pass rushing duos? Yeah. Well, that was fun while it lasted. Ingram was a dynamic pass rusher from 2015 to 2019. In that span, he recorded no fewer than 7 sacks per season and earned a trio of Pro Bowl nods, even helping the Chargers to get into the postseason in 2018. But Ingram's 2020 season was cut short to 7 games because of injury, but he didn't have a single sack in those contests. Ingram split the 2021 season with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Kansas City Chiefs, arriving at KC via trade, but neither team was able to help him turn back the clock. He's merely a depth player at this stage of his career, who's only seeing 50 to 60% of the team's defensive snaps per game. Not only is he no longer a superstar, but Ingram is barely starting caliber anymore. Who knows how many years he has left in this league. So hey, enjoy him while you can. Odell Beckham Jr. When he was with the New York Giants, OBJ was widely regarded as a top 3 receiver in the game. Even if Eli Manning was far from an elite quarterback, there were few more potent QB receiver duos than he and Beckham. Once the Giants decided to deal him to the Cleveland Browns in the 2019 offseason, however, Beckham saw his career production slip rapidly. He simply was not a fit in the Cleveland offense. Baker Mayfield was often seen trying to force the ball to Beckham, and the chemistry between the two just never really materialized. The Browns and Beckham ultimately agreed to part ways in the midst of the 2021 season. The Los Angeles Rams scooped up the former Pro Bowler, who quickly found his footing in Sean McVay's offense. But that said, Beckham's production with the Rams still wasn't anywhere close to what we saw with the Giants. The difference is that he and the Rams had a mutual understanding that his role would be smaller compared to what he was being asked to do earlier in his career. Beckham can still make the big plays, no doubt, but he is far from an elite wide receiver these days. If anything, he's a decent number 2 or a solid number 3. The Rams and fantasy owners are quickly getting to know that. Von Miller. The Super Bowl 50 MVP is a lock for the Hall of Fame. He was arguably the 3rd best defensive player of the last decade, behind only Aaron Donald and J.J. Watt. Miller can still play, no doubt. He's more than capable of making game-changing plays from time to time. The difference, of course, is that he doesn't do it as often these days compared to his prime years. Miller's last All-Pro nod was 2018. In 2019, he had 8 sacks and graded 79.3 by PFF for the year, which was far below his usual standards. But hey, still pretty solid. In 2020, he missed the entire season with an ankle injury, although thankfully it would not spell the end of his career. Miller returned and continued to be a strong playmaker for the Broncos before he was traded to the Rams ahead of the trade deadline. Though he is a nice compliment to Aaron Donald, we aren't seeing the superstar version of Miller anymore. His playing time has dropped noticeably in 2021. At this age of his career, Miller will have to accept a lesser role. He's still a very useful player who can help a team's pass rush, but it's been 3 years now since he was truly elite and contending for the sacks title. Matt Ryan. Matty Ice was widely regarded as a top 5 or 10 quarterback throughout the first half of his career. But since Ryan's 2016 MVP season, which was overshadowed by the Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl 51 collapse, it's been all downhill for the most part. It's not entirely Ryan's fault though. He hasn't had a half-decent offensive line nor a legitimate number 1 running back for a few years now. And the Falcons defense is atrocious, meaning he has to put up 30-something points per game for Atlanta to even have a chance. But there's also no denying that Ryan hasn't been the same since Kyle Shanahan left to take the San Francisco 49ers head coaching job in 2017. In his MVP year, Ryan had 4,944 passing yards and 38 touchdowns. Since then, he's exceeded 4,500 passing yards once, and he's failed to even come close to the 30 touchdown mark in his last 3 seasons. Again, it's not entirely his fault, but we've seen several elite quarterbacks make the most of difficult situations. Ryan can still play and would be a nice fit for a championship hopeful team that's desperate for a QB. But he is no longer capable of carrying an offense. If we're being honest, he's probably not even a top 15 quarterback these days. STEPHON Gilmore. Gilmore isn't totally past his prime. The 2019 Defensive Player of the Year still has at least 1 or 2 quality seasons left in him. The truth is, Gilmore just isn't a top cornerback anymore. His completion percentage allowed when targeted has gone up considerably since 2020. It was as low as 48.4 back in 2018, which is what you're used to seeing from an all-pro corner. That's when Gilmore was among the NFL's best at his position. But he is no longer a sure bet to eliminate the opposition's top wideout. He's still prone to giving up the explosive plays, and he can't quite keep up with the younger and faster guys the way he used to. He can still provide a jolt to most defenses, but it's time to exclude Gilmore from any debate about the top cornerbacks in the game today. Cam Newton. Like several other guys on this list, it's mostly injuries that have contributed to the rather quick decline for Cam Newton. That's kind of sad to see, really. He was one of the game's most exciting players during his prime years with the Carolina Panthers. The 2015 league MVP had a wicked release and completely took over games with his dual threat abilities. But Newton's 2018 season was largely affected by an irritating shoulder injury. A Lisfranc injury sidelined him for all but 2 games in 2019, and the Panthers ultimately decided to release the franchise icon in 2020. A 1-year stop with the New England Patriots wasn't enough to save Newton's career. He returned to Carolina in the midst of the 2021 season, but again, Newton's physical limitations prevented him from being all that effective. What can we say? Age and injuries have added up, and quite quickly, I might add. Newton is better suited for a backup or even a Taysom Hill-like role at this point. He's still dangerous as a runner, but the guy is far from a capable starting option anymore. Superstar Cam Newton is long gone. It's time for him to accept a backup role the rest of the way. But which other NFL players are no longer superstars? Join us in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.